Welcome to Fuzzybutts and Friends. Well, as much as it drives Fuzzybutts all over this place absolutely crazy when they hear me say it, I am the host of the show, your big dog, Luke Robinson, back again with you this week. And also back again this week is Ginger Morgan. She's our co-host, and she's also the executive director of the Puppy Up Foundation. Ginger, how are you?
I'm doing well. And yes, it does drive me crazy when you say that every week.
I know, but I got to tell you, though, I got it from Car Talk. I used to love that show on NPR. That's how they ended their show rather than began it. But I got to tell you, though, I go back and I look at the previous episodes of our podcast, and every one of our guests, whenever they hear me say it, they smile. So I think it works. It probably drives our regular audience absolutely crazy when they hear me say it. Yep. But it makes, and you know what? It also sets the tone for the show because this is about Fuzzybutts and Friends. And so we talk about some tough issues, as you know, and some painful ones. And we're probably going to have some tough issues with our guest here today because she's in the rescue and adoption business as well as everything. So I kind of like it, but well, why don't you come up with your own intro? I'm always introducing you, for God's sake.
Oh, I probably should, but I am looking forward to talking to our guest today, especially since the 4th of July is probably a really busy time for her in the pet recovery business.
Yes, yes, it's very relevant, very timely, as you see. I think we tried to get her on last week or the week, whenever the July 4th week was, and she was crazy busy. But here with us today, everybody, is Babs Fry. You know, Ginger, I got to say this. I forgot to set it up. We've had so many people on this show, veterinary oncologists, dentists. We've had livestock guardian trainers. We've CEOs, we've had everybody, but we've never had a pet detective. So I'm excited today that we have our first pet detective. It's Babs Fry out of California. Babs, how are you?
Good, Luke. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to educating everybody on the aftermath of the 4th of July and how to set themselves up for success in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been on social media, and it looks like people are still missing dogs and still finding dogs.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, yes, we have. Yeah, we have lots to talk about, including what to do on July 4th and also educating people. One of the things I know I set this up. I know you didn't like it because you don't actually like to be referred to as a pet detective. You're in, as Ginger said, the tracking and recovery business. So everyone, pet detectives, I think, is that true? Does anybody in your line of work, do they like being called a pet detective?
You know, there are some people that go by that. That brings up visions of Ace Ventura, psychic, crazy stuff, and I'm in the business of, recovery and trapping. And there's certainly a line of talking like a dog, but that doesn't mean I get to talk with dogs. I would sleep a lot more and have a lot happier owners if I could talk to dogs.
Yeah. I actually love the Ace Ventura Pet Detective series because it was new and fresh, and we'd never seen anybody out there rescuing our Fuzzybutt friends. So I thought it was refreshing, but I get it. Yours is a serious business, and that's important. Well, Babs, before we get into the serious part of your business, let's start with the fun first. So tell us about, I'm sure you have a ton of Fuzzybutts. Tell us about your Fuzzybutts.
Do we have 5 hours? I have a family full of fur for sure. But primarily on my side of the house, my husband and I actually live in separate states. We have a sanctuary in Texas where we keep our more challenging dogs to place and long-term residents. I'm still at our property in San Diego where I provide a lot of more of the on-site and field work. So I'm living in the rescue facility. But so that means I've got about 70 dogs in my care surrounding me at any given moment. But they range from a 5-pound Russell's Griffon Yorkie mix to, I've got 100+ pound Shepherd Malamute mix. So,
what are they yours and your husband's personal Fuzzybutts? Are they there available for adoption and you're just taking care of them for a while? You're their caretaker.
Available for adoption. I mean, we have some personal pets, but most of those are dogs that over time we have rescued that have just demonstrated for different reasons, behavioral, flight risk, or whatever the case may be, not to be well suited for a transition into a new home. And therefore we try to acclimate them into our home setting so that they have a home to live in and a family to call their own.
Yeah, that's how Ginger ended up with a dozen fuzzy butts, is that she used to work at the Humane Society, and when she left, I think she took half of them with her.
Yep, we
When
have
when
10
I
that we
left,
get
I
more
had-
personal.
When I left, I had 13, and then I talked somebody out of their old dachshund.
Yeah, Ricky, that was Ricky. I love
That was
Ricky.
Annie. That was Annie.
Oh, that's
Annie.
right. That's right.
Lucy
Yeah.
and Ricky had 2 dachshunds that were rescues. Lucy and Ricky, and then I talked somebody out of Annie.
All right. One thing I left out, Babs, is I left out that in addition to the fact that you're in the pet recovery and tracking business, is that you also have fostering and adoption nonprofit as well. I love the name. It's called A Way Home for Dogs. So now that we talked about your Fuzzy Butts in your household, actually you have 2 households. I think that's awesome. You have 2 locations because there's obviously, as we know, a huge need for Fuzzy Butts out there that need a good home. So let's talk about A Way Home for Dogs. Let's talk about your genesis, your origin story, how you got started in this racket. I'm going to call it a racket because that's what dogs do. They suck you in. They take pretty soon they take over your life, man. That's they have full reign over your life. So how did you get started in pet rescue and pet detective business?
Well, I mean, it's a long story, but the abbreviated version is I have always been drawn to animals since I was in kindergarten, skipping school to catch tadpoles. Into my young adult years, I connected very heavily with animals. When I became an adult, I was just always a sucker for the underdog. And, my husband and I have always been rescuers. We've always taken in those pets that needed somebody or nothing. I then got very heavily immersed into the rescue community here locally in Southern California with a large rescue. My specialty happened to be the dogs that were extremely fearful. I was kind of the last stop for a lot of those dogs in the rescue because they were either feral, grossly under-socialized, and sometimes maybe slightly aggressive. And it was during that window that I actually lost one of those fosters. Dog had been with us 12 hours, leapt out of my husband's arms, literally peed and pooped herself if you touched her, quaked the entire time she was in your presence. And we live in the back country. She was due with puppies any day, and she's 40 pounds, which for me, I'm a big dog girl generally. So that's small, even though I know in the world of dogs, that's medium for others. And to be frank, I was sure she was going to die. I would never see her again. And I spent a day and a half as I call it now to others, I spent a day and a half in panic parent mode, making a lot of panic parent mode, making very common mistakes.
Oh, I know that mode.
Yeah, I mean, common mistakes, operating off a human instinct, desperation. And what I didn't realize at the time on some levels was arrogance and ignorance, not intentionally, but this was my specialty, not trapping dogs, but fearful dogs. I didn't understand that what I lacked was a grasp on real dog behavior when their raw instinct kicks in, which is flight in uncontrolled settings and unpredictable variables. After a very grueling 10 days, that dog was safe in a trap in my driveway where I would have said it would never return, because I was desperate enough to listen to somebody who at the time was coaching me like I do others now. And I got an aha moment and vowed to pay it forward and said, how stupid are we as people? Why don't we know this? This should be general information. My intention was just to kind of pay it forward. And I found I had a gift and a passion, which blossomed into where we are now.
So you lost one of your kids. You contacted somebody who was in the business that you're in, and they helped you find and bring home safely, thank God, safely your kid. And that's wonderful. I got to say, I know that panic parent mode, and not just cancer. I've lost 3 dogs to cancer, so that's a different type of panic. But my first Pyrenees, Malcolm, when I was the stupid dog dad, I was the first time dog dad. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Probably shouldn't have had him, and I had to learn so many hard lessons. And fortunately, it never cost me something like that. But I was in a little bedroom community outside of San Antonio, Texas. I had a management consulting practice there, and my brother and I lived out on 3 acres in Castroville, Texas. And out there, it's all farms and whatnot. And Malcolm, who was my first Pyrenees, my first introduction into the world of Pyrenees.
Way to go.
And as you know, they roam. Those guys roam.
Yes. That's the deep end.
It's a deep, I like that. So we actually had 1 acre back in our backyard fenced with the cyclone fence. But I tell you what, that fuzzy butt can climb over the fence and throw himself over and just take off, man. And he would come home like a couple hours later, covered in mud, and I don't know where he'd been. And he did, the first time he did that, he was only gone a couple hours. But then I lost him. And I lost him for, like, I think you said 12 hours, and that was the case with mine. And I was terrified because I was worried about being out there in the rural areas. You have farmers that if your dog is on their property, on their farm, they will shoot first and ask questions second. So I was terrified and petrified. Thank God I had my tags on Malcolm, and he went up to one of the farmers. He did go to one of the farmers' property, but they called him. We saved him. So I know what that's like. That panic parent mode where you don't know what to do, you think you do. I think you said that you had arrogance in there as well. I'm interested to hear about that, but it's a terribly frightening experience. So you lost yours. How long after you lost yours did you realize, you know what, I bet there's a ton of people out there like me, and I will develop the skill sets to be able to help them? How long was that transition?
It was instantaneous, to be honest with you, because I had been in rescue, and part of the reason I say arrogance is because of my experience in rescue, I brought to the table a special commitment, passion, and skill set, from being in rescue and dealing with fearful dogs, that led me to believe I knew a lot of things. And I did, but I got a really clear smack in the face, frankly, on how little we know about that added piece. And Laura Bittinger, the gal who helped me, and we're still very good friends, and we joke about it to this day, is I probably harassed her for several weeks, wanting to follow her and help her and be a part of, so I could learn and help pay this forward beyond just sharing my experience. And I now understand why she made me work hard to get her embrace in joining her. Everybody wants to go out and spend 12, 24 hours, or when they've got a minute or two, to be a hero, without the real understanding of the dedication, the commitment, and you don't get to stop because it doesn't feel good or it's not comfortable anymore when it comes to recovering these dogs. And I actually earned her trust when I crawled through the underground flow line or pipe or drain pipe, whatever you want to call it, through 8 lanes of a freeway.
Wow.
Working with a dog that had gotten in there. And I actually was in my work clothes. I'd thrown off my heels, and I think she decided that I was in it for real. And she fortunately let me follow her quite a bit. I found that I had a natural talent because of my natural connection with dogs and their understanding of their behavior. To be honest, I'm a horsewoman first and foremost. And there is an incredible, you were talking about your Great Pyrenees, my very first horse. He was very dangerous. I was way overhorsed, and I was very stupid. And as a result of that, I got a lot of lessons about myself and about animal behavior. And a lot of that has transitioned into how I work with dogs and pressure and body language. And it was, through that and then multiple others that I started stepping in to help, kind of finding my own niche, being open to education and collaboration with others that had more experience than me. It's just kind of where things have gone.
I am there probably wouldn't be anything I wouldn't do for my kids and my fuzzy butts. Get down and crawl through drain pipes that are I have my 2 fears. I really only have one. It's heights, but I'm a little bit claustrophobic, and I would imagine that would be terrifying. But we do that for our fuzzy butts, but you're right. You have that sense of heroism that you want to be the hero, and you want to go out and save the day, find the fuzzy butt. But the reality is, it's a tough job, and you don't have all the successes, and that's where I would fail. If I had one bad result, one bad outcome that didn't go the way I like, that would just decimate me. That would tear me apart. So you have to also have the tough character to be able to deal with the tough ones, the ones that aren't the wins, the ones where you lose. And we'll get to that. We'll talk about some stories that you have to share. Please only share the good stories, not the success stories. I don't want to get angry or cry. If it's a person that's involved and they've hurt an animal, I just get angry and I want to break things. And if it's not, I just want to cry. So go ahead, Ginger. It looks like you want to say something.
Yeah. So Babs, was your dog missing for 12 hours or 10 days? She got loose after
10 days. And I lived in that country. I'd seen coyotes in the field where she had run through. I often tell owners that I made Unfortunately, the first interaction with me for a lot of people leaves them feeling like all they've done is messed it up and everything wrong, without understanding that I've made those same mistakes. Those are human things. And I've yet to hear somebody say they did anything like what I did when my dog went missing. I literally got the other dog that it was bonded to and was chasing after the lost dog with a scared to death dog behind me, screaming, alligator rolling on a leash, thinking miraculously this scared to death dog that ran from me to begin with is going to go, you must be my savior. It's just human. It is human, but it was 10 days. And the most, I share that story very often with owners, because the biggest piece of that was that this woman kept telling me if I would stop getting in the way, that dog was very likely going to come back to my house. And I told my husband every night that lady was crazy. And I'm here to tell you, on day 10, that dog was in a trap in my driveway, and it had traveled a mile and a half away. But a lot of that had to do with what I now understand to be dog behavior, but also she'd given me some very specific cues with that other dog, not dragging it down the road screaming bloody murder, but doing something different, that ultimately gave this dog the reason to come back, to stick around, and then not getting in the way so we could get it safely trapped.
I think
I had a dog get away from me. She slipped out of a harness, and she was pretty feral. And she was gone. I mean, I put a compass on a map and drew out the three miles, because I read someplace that you'll find them within 3 miles. And I literally put signs out at every intersection, not major intersection, every intersection. I found her at animal control on the 12th day.
Yep.
They picked her up 3.25 miles from my house.
Right outside of your signs.
Exactly. But I did have signs even past that downtown, but still, because people were driving through. But it was, I don't think I slept or ate for that 12 days.
Well, and we'll get into it later, I'm sure, but that harness conversation is one we'll definitely have, because that is a mistake a lot of people make with fearful dogs.
Let's go talk about now. Let's talk about now.
Well,
yeah.
Harnesses, one of the biggest things that I promote and am adamant for with anybody that adopts one of my dogs, but also individuals with dogs in general, the friendliest dog in the world has a fear button. It's instinct. But especially with the fearful dogs, a lot of people go to a harness because of all that material. It gives that illusion of safety and security. And as Ginger learned, and as many of the owners I talk to learn, much like a t-shirt in a fight or jerseys in a football game, you start moving body parts, they come right off. And the fact of the matter is that when a dog panics, its body parts that control that harness go prone, up or backwards, it is going to come off and you've got a mess. Whereas a martingale collar or a slip lead is designed to tighten in the event of a panic and not come off if properly fitted. And for those that argue medical or health issues, if there is a legitimate concern, then you clip that martingale collar to the harness. So you're still utilizing your harness, but you'll have a dog if it comes off. Or some people will argue pulling and choking. And the fact of the matter is, it's not a tool, it's a training. If your dog is pulling on a martingale collar or a slip lead and gagging, then you need to teach it how to walk on a leash, not give it up for something that gives you either less control or a liability for safety.
I can still close my eyes and see her go out of that. I mean, she just bent that head and came out of it. And I was like,
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even know how animal control picked her up, because they had to have used probably a catch pole or something. I don't even want to think about it. But anyway, trust me, when she went out of the house, after that, she had on a martingale, and she had on a regular, I had 2 leashes, and I would walk her down the street and she'd like to just spin around. They would get all caught together. It was like, whatever, we are not, this is never happening again.
Yep.
Well, let's talk about that. What are the main reasons that people lose their pet? Because on any given day, your kid should be safely secure in your house, right? And the only exception is, Adam, when you take them outdoors on a walk, then they should be secured, like you two were just talking about, or you're taking them to the beach, you're taking them to the coffee house. I go take my kids to go with me and write in the morning and stuff like that. But what are the main reasons why people lose their pets that you found?
There's a wide variety, and I'm always asked, Babs, you need to put out a book or a black and white list. And the one thing I really want to make clear now, part of the reason I make my phone number public and I answer my phone 24/7, except for situations like this where it's on do not disturb, is it's a recipe. Every dog thinks for itself. When, where, how, and what is different in every situation, and you've got people involved. History. The most common reasons a lot of times is newly adopted dogs, or the biggest piece that I have experienced is, over the last 10 to 15 years, social media and rescue has revolutionized opportunities for dogs, like Ginger was talking about, that would have been euthanized, through rescue, through social media, and an awareness of opportunities and resources for dogs that are not the gregarious lab that'll never leave your side, that likes to hunt ducks and sleep in bed with you at night. The reality is there's a lot of these dogs who now have options. Where we are still trying to bridge that gap is where they're at emotionally, mentally, and safety protocols. Part of the reason I've got this dog with me today is she's getting ready to go to her forever home. She has been with me for a long time, and when we go to events and we go in public, she is gregarious, tail wagging, happy-go-lucky. But wouldn't you know, today, when we show up at our venue, she's like, stairs, freeway noise, that's a strange room. Even in the company of someone she trusts, some of those behaviors recur. And when a dog goes to a new person or in the care of a third party, the reality is we have to remember dogs in the raw operate on instinct. Fight or flight, fly or die. It's a very black and white line. And the reality is you cannot train that out of a dog. And every dog has a different threshold. So it can be something as simple as, we just got home from the shelter and my world is upside down and I don't have proper equipment on. A lot of times they get out of harnesses, they jump out of the car because they're not tethered, they're newly adopted, or they've been in the house for a long time and a friend comes over. They dart the door, car accidents, fireworks. You have to remember that we operate in a world of unpredictable and uncontrollable things between the environment and people. So it's a hard question to answer. I mean, I would say the majority of the calls that I get are either newly adopted dogs, dogs that are rescues to begin with in the care of third parties, or unexpected events, being it fireworks, car crash, trash can falls over while you're on a walk. There's just a whole list of things. It's that go button that every dog has.
Yeah, I'm on my 5th Pyrenees, and so I've dealt with the livestock guardian, ancient breed that's been around for thousands of years. And one of the things I've noticed, and I love this about Pyrenees, but it's also, terrifying to me, is they kind of have the attitude of, I've been around for thousands of years and I really don't need you to take care of me. I think I got this on my own. And that's why they work so well going out in the pasture and tending to the livestock. They're very independent. They're an independent breed. And so, when I see how Pyrenees interact, they've always looked at as people. It's like, I don't know if I trust you being my guard, taking care of me. And so, but I've traveled a lot, Babs, for the foundation that we have and the work that we do for cancer in dogs. And I talk to so many people, but I got to tell you that the ones that irritate me the most are the ones out in the country, and you talk to them and they say, I lost a dog once. I lost my dog Benny or whatever, and boy, he was a great dog. And I tell you what, he was an outdoor dog. We let him roam out in the pasture and I tell you, he never ever crossed the street until that one time.
You used the word never.
Yeah, exactly, never. There was that one time there was a skunk or a squirrel, and he darted across the street and boom, got killed. And those people, I just have to keep myself contained, because I'm thinking in my head, that's absolutely not the first time that Benny crossed the street, because nature designed Benny, and every time he saw a squirrel or there was a smell or a cute little fuzzy butt walking across, Benny's always crossing the street. So I bet part of the frustration of your job is education. You have to educate so many people. It's like, look, these are nature-made dogs and their predecessors long before people. I think before people. I'm not sure. Somebody will have to fact check me on that. But they've been around for a long time, right? And so they have their instincts, and people. I don't think that people really truly understand dogs' instincts. Would you agree with that?
You know, Luke, I could not agree more. And I mean, I could talk for 3 hours on a few bullets that you hit. I mean, the first one I have to say is I just have to say about the Great Pyrenees, because you keep saying it. And I laughed when you made the reference. I get calls about Great Pyrenees, and you're exactly right. They do roam. I mean, I've had a Great Pyrenees cover 30 miles in a day, but people see these big, cumbersome fluffs of fur and they presume them to have no athleticism. And those things can jump, climb, they can do things you wouldn't even imagine. And it goes to your point. You're exactly right. You know, I struggle sometimes when it comes to my communication with people because, frankly, the hardest part of my job is not catching the dogs. It is managing the people, but then also really trying to stay firm in what I need to do to help them with their dogs. And the education piece is a challenge. People can get very caught up in their human conclusions, assumptions, and assessments. And I have to educate people on instinct. And a lot of that means putting your feelings aside. I mean, you nailed it. There's two pieces to that. I do have to take a deep breath when I get those calls with, well, no, I mean, at least a couple times a day, I get that call from, yeah, well, he always takes off, but he always comes back until he doesn't, right? Until he doesn't. But my job is not to make them feel bad. My job is to help them get their dog back. It's about the dog, and then utilize that hopefully to educate, to prevent another occurrence. You know, I laugh with a never. I mean, never is never, never until it happens. It never is never until it happens.
Right.
So many of my calls start that way. But talking about instinct, there are a couple of things I tell people that they struggle with. You know, predation and other things we can talk about. But the reality is that is exactly why dogs flee. Even a Great Pyrenees, mentally and emotionally, is wired as a prey animal despite being a predator out in the big bad world, which is why they behave the way that they do. But dogs are dogs. And the minute they left your care, the biggest struggle for people is understanding it will not starve to death. I don't care how long it's out there. It will not die of dehydration, and it will not die of the elements. And a lot of people will argue that point with me. And what I will tell you is the dogs that die of starvation were either dumped, incapacitated nutritionally to begin with, so they could not do what they needed to do, hunt, forage, eat, roadkill, and otherwise, to thrive or survive, or sickness, illness. And an example I use with people a lot, and I mean no offense to the Shar-Pei community, it's just an affectionate example that I like to share with people. You know, I will ask them, I mean, Shar-Peis, right? I mean, they're cute, they're nice and everything else, but they're not genetically built for survival. You know, I mean, their nose is buried in wrinkles, you can't see. I mean, they have no fur. I mean, you look at a Shar-Pei, and to think that it could take care of itself for a day would give some people pause. And I helped an owner and trainer in Maine or Michigan, I forget which M it was, but needless to say, a really cold location in February with a Shar-Pei that was out for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Doing just fine until I navigated them through how to get the dog stationary. I coached them by phone. I consult worldwide, and I coach remotely on a daily basis, helping others trap their own dogs or navigate how to use the resources. 3 weeks later, that dog was in a trap and back with its family. And, because they were panicked parents, they didn't think they'd ever see their dog to begin with, regardless of location, time, and breed. But a Shar-Pei 3 weeks in whatever lake, whatever northeast state that was, definitely gives some people for pause. And we have to remember that these are animals. It doesn't mean, and I want to clarify a fallacy. There's a lot of talk out there about after a certain period of time, they become feral. Feral means never having been exposed or experienced human touch. Okay. They don't go from socialized animals to feral. What they do is revert to natural instinct, which is survival mode. And that's where that fight or flight comes in. That's where that need for resources. And I have seen dogs that were bottle fed, went to work with their parent every day for 2 years, literally sit in a bush and not come out when their parent was around and have to be humanely trapped. We have to remember these are animals that operate on a level that we forget is there when they are sleeping in bed with us at night and going everywhere as our companion.
Yeah, well, that's the challenge, though. I mean, for the average pet parent is, or for all pet parents, actually, is that is that we can't communicate with our mates, and so it's incumbent upon us to, through observation and study, and to learn to understand them and to learn to understand their nature. But I think that's fascinating, and you're right. They have to go immediately when they're in the wild into the survival mode, because in your neck of the woods in California, which I've backpacked the entire length of the West Coast, and I know some of the man, we had a couple of mountain lion encounters out there, mountain cat encounters out there, and you got a lot of dangers and threats. So if your dog becomes goes in the wilderness, they have to survive out there. They have to go into that mode of protecting themselves. What out of curiosity, Babs, what percentage of dogs, do all dogs or most dogs that have been domesticated, that have been with their families for almost their entire lives, what percentage of them come home, or do they all try to come home, and the ones that don't, for whatever reason, they just can't get home?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that. And, the reality is I can't give you a percentage,
Sure.
because the reality is I talk to people every day and I don't even know how many people end up with successful results because they come back or otherwise, because I don't always get that follow-up phone call.
Sure.
What I will tell you is that every dog left to its own device has the objective of coming back.
Right. So they all want to return. Okay.
Yes. And let me tell you what's even crazier. And my dog is a good example, which is why I share that, and I just recently trapped a dog that had gotten away from the new adopter, literally jumped out of the car in the driveway, had been running for days, and trapped it in their driveway. And, I just explained to you why dogs won't die of starvation, dehydration, of the elements, right? Now we can go, oh, that makes sense. Now that I take that human piece out of it, it's counterintuitive, but it's common sense. The one thing I just cannot give people a good, make me feel better human explanation for is the fact that dogs left to their own devices go back to where they left. No matter how long they had been there, who they were with, what the circumstances were, and what motivation they have. It's trippy, but that's what they do. But what I can tell you is that we see it every day. I mean, I've trapped hundreds of dogs in places, or negotiated to safety is probably a better way to put that. Dogs that have done exactly that. The reality is, I can tell you, I can't give you percentages, but what I will tell you is the percentage is directly proportional to our not getting in the way, right, and setting them up for success. If that dog is out there having to spend all of its time avoiding the massive search parties and the scent hounds and the neighbors and the everybody else, it can't navigate its way back because everybody is pushing it out of the area. The flip side of that is there's a lot of times when we have very valuable tools that are assets to get that dog back that become liabilities. I'll use my example. That dog that had come into the rescue that was a bonded pair. I'm out traipsing all over creation. Well, no wonder my dog went all over creation. But the minute I started utilizing that dog at my house, going nowhere but my house, doing very specific things with those smells, despite that dog having no interest in me, my house, my environment, or otherwise, it came back. And especially when you have, as you mentioned it, a companion pet, you've got ammunition. Use it as an asset, not a liability. I talk to people daily because, here's one thing I will say, and I'm sorry, but if I offend people, it's not intentional. Stop reading online. You could diagnose yourself with cancer on Google if you wanted to. And the reality is there are a lot of people out there that mean well. There are people that are hero seeking. There are people that have whatever motive it might be, but they regurgitate things that they hear from people like myself or others with field experience and practical application, but out of context. Or they read a great piece of something on somebody's website and they repeat it without really knowing what's good or bad. The reality is doing the things I outlined for people with their smell at home does no good if they're taking their smell everywhere else at the same time. The dog bed, bring the freaking dog bed in, people. Yeah. The dog bed serves no benefit. The dog is running around with its own smell. It is not looking for creature comforts, but I will tell you, when it rounds the corner and sees a shadow, it has to decide whether that's a comfy bed or a coyote, and it's not coming. There's just a lot of information out there that's dated because we have a better understanding of dog behavior now than we did before. And we have different types of dogs in homes as companion pets.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with what you said. You just were speaking to it briefly about getting in the way of yourself, and I think I have an understanding of that. I know I did that with Malcolm. Probably did all the things wrong when I lost Malcolm, but when I was on my first walk, Hudson and Murphy got away from me, got loose off leash, and we were right off of Highway 40 coming out of Baltimore, which I don't know if you've ever been that, but that's a 4-lane nightmare where people are driving 80, 90 miles an hour. And we were just resting, taking a rest underneath the grove of trees. And they both got loose. And within 10, 20 feet, you're talking about certain death, right? They get onto the highway, they're gone. It's far too much traffic out there. And so my initial reaction was to panic and freak out, but they totally picked up on that energy and they wouldn't come anywhere near me. They're like going, "Oh, Dad's freaking out. Dad's panicking.
Right?
Something's going on. Something's wrong." And they ran away from me. And so I had to stop myself and go, "Oh, it's a game. It's a game. Make it a game." And I had to turn it around and make it fun and give them a reason to come back. And so I assume that that's what you're talking about, that people's instincts are not. No, it's not what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, you're there, you're 50% there.
Yeah.
It's not a game. And,
Right.
and the reason I really want to clarify that is the mistake, it's depending on the dog and what perpetuates the push. You nailed it. They took off, you hit the panic button, and they went, "Oh crap, they're trying to kill Dad too. We better keep going."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but you don't want to make it a game because it's about passive. You have to stop,
Yeah.
do nothing. You make it a game and you continue energy, activity, and engagement. Your dog still has to make a decision. If you go completely passive, you don't have to worry about their assessment of what it means, if that makes sense. You
Yeah.
just don't take that risk. So,
Yeah.
you make it a game, you recognize that they're picking up on that energy, and then you make it we call it a non-event.
Okay.
A non-event in the world of a dog is what they need to get their bearings and get their surroundings. One of the things that I often tell, I used to ask a lot of questions and I've stopped doing that because it led to some awkward conversations. Now I just make statements, because I used to ask people, "Hey, are you married? Do you have a teenager?" And where I was going with that is, at some point in anybody's life, they have had an argument or a blowout fight about tone of voice and attitude, right? Nonverbals. Everybody says dogs smell fear. Fear has no smell. It's nonverbals. And you nailed it. They took off, you panicked, and they went, "Oh crap, they're trying to kill Dad too." And all that nonverbal stuff hit their go button, because now they're like, "Well, we better really be scared."
Right.
And you have to be careful of that. That's why I tell people, you don't call out to your dog. Your dog goes missing, it's not even thinking its name. The reality is they smell better than they hear, and it's about a passive presence. And that's why I spend a lot of time on the phone with people, educating them about what to do, when to do it, how to do it, so on and so forth. Because if you don't understand how to massage that recipe, you're going to end up with a really crappy chili, except this is not chili. This is life or death of your dog.
Right. Well, I guess what I meant was to clarify, was not that it's a game, but just to stop and turn it around and not make it a crisis or an emergency situation.
Correct.
Where it was like, "Oh, hey guys, come get a treat, come over here and get a snack." And but what I meant was that when you say getting in the way of yourself, what you're really saying is that as a human, your instincts are almost always wrong. If you rely on your instincts in this situation, you're probably going to make a mistake, right?
Absolutely. And I tell people all the time, if somebody makes a great idea or a great suggestion to you, chances are pretty good it's a bad idea in the world of a dog. We're not dogs. We don't think like dogs. And I want to make just a quick clarification on terminology. There's a big difference between wrong and mistake. And I share that with owners because there already comes an enormous amount of fear, feelings, and guilt or accusation, pending, whether it's yourself or third party. And the reality is, wrong is knowing otherwise and deciding to say, "Screw you, I'm going to do it anyway." Well, yep, that's wrong. Mistake is not knowing different and making a mistake. And I only clarify that because, one of the things I try really hard to make sure of, as you mentioned, very beginning of the show, they're not all happy endings. And the reality is, I don't ever want an owner to leave a horrible situation that ends in tragedy feeling more responsible than they already do. The real challenge in what I do is people don't always want to hear what I have to tell them. And more specifically, I can't always make people feel better. And I can't just say what's going to make them okay with what they've done or what they're doing. And that's where sometimes it can get extremely difficult, because I do see dogs die every day. And there's nothing worse than seeing an opportunity that, based on my experience in the field and with dogs, might have had a very different outcome end in tragedy because of either mistakes or arrogance. And, there's a fine line there. There's a very fine line there. And truthfully, I'm still trying to fine tune my people skills on being able to just go, totally understand. I'm really sorry you want to do it differently. I can't really help you, and I hope it all works out. That's hard for me, and then you do that and it's still callous. But, at the end of the day, it's self-preservation on my part, frankly. I do this for the dogs and vicariously for the people that are attached to them. I get to be reminded on a daily basis that there are good people out there through doing this. And I'm very lucky to have that miraculous recovery to carry me out of the depths of the darkness when you seem to be on a long roll of why am I doing this? And I can't do this anymore, and the fact is, there's a reason, and these dogs are the reason, and there are good people out there, but it doesn't make it easy. And so that, as you mentioned, is the biggest piece. If you had gotten on the phone with me on the side of that freeway and said, Babs, my dogs just took off, what do I do? And I said, you do nothing, sit tight and stop looking for your dog. You might not be real happy with me. I mean, really? What responsible, loving pet owner doesn't go looking for their dog, right?
Right.
It's hard. I didn't say it's easy, but it's the most important step. And I start that with people that I talk to. And it sounds calloused, but I'm like, if you cannot embrace that concept and be absolutely compliant with it from the beginning, I can't help you. It's not that I don't want to, but going back to the laundry, I can tell you all these things to do, but if you're doing them and everything I tell you not to do, you're compromising your odds and subsequently taking me on your roller coaster ride or train wreck. And I have to invest my time on the people that are doing the things we can to set them and their dogs up for success.
I think I've learned, Babs, and through my travels, is that most people just can't get beyond their history, and I come from Texas, and down there's still areas in Texas where there nobody says companion animals. That's property down there. They're pets, and that's what they do in life. That's the function they serve, or if they're working animals on the farm. And it's like chattel to them. And so if you're raised in that environment and that's where you come from, you're just not educated as on any of these things. And it's a tremendous hurdle and it's a tremendous struggle. But that's why you have organizations like ours, Puppy Up Foundation, which on the cancer side, historically, those people, their dogs diagnosed with cancer, they just put them down. They just take them out to the pasture, as you know. And sometimes they don't even biopsy. I've heard so many stories that when a dog gets lame or it's having a problem, it can't move around or anything like that, they take it to the vet, their country vet. The country vet says, well, it could be a number of things, and cancer is one of them. If it doesn't heal in 2 weeks, it's probably cancer. And they don't even do a biopsy. They'll just, in 2 weeks, if it's not healed, boom, okay, well, that's it, we're done with that. And it's so hard for me as a person who's invested the last 15 of my years of my life for our Fuzzybutts. It's so hard for me to relate to somebody like that, to understand that, to feel sympathetic or even empathetic with that person. But I get it, because I have family members, members of my own family don't have that companionship, don't value our companions the same way I do. So it's a struggle, and you're right. It's all about education. As painful, as tough, and as long as it takes, it is. And hopefully, within a couple of generations, maybe we'll all be better pet parents. You never know. But, there is, a reason for doing that. So let's go to I want to hear, let's move away from people, because they're one of those, like you said, there's one of those unknown quantities that you really can't control. You can't control the pet parent, but you can understand dogs and their nature. So let's talk about some of the good stories, the success stories. What have you tell us some great stories?
God, there's so many of them. The reality is, you just have to remember where these dogs started, where they come from, and more specifically, who they are. And we talked some about that, about instinct. I think that one of the big things that I do beyond education is be the voice of hope. And that's one of the things I tell owners to do with other pet parents who lose their pets, because the world will tell you, that your dog has died or stolen or otherwise. And the reality is, given enough time and effort, the odds are very good this dog will not just make it, but could be back to you. And that's what we have to remember. I've got I have that 5 pound, 6 pound, whatever it is, Brussels Griffon Yorkie mix, that is now part of my rescue. It had gotten on my radar because in addition to, pet parents, I'm frequently called by Good Samaritans or animal control agencies about dogs that are at large, and this dog was a mess, like had it damage to an eye. I mean, matted to the point of probably, it was a mess. And someone reached out, said, "Hey, Babs, this dog's been running in our area. It happens to be a place where there is a very hefty concentration of coyotes because they've kind of denned up on a hill. And even I am human. The reality is I've seen so many of these dogs make it through crazy things, but I know it's, a concern. So I go out, we do some footwork, we go to set a trap. In the meantime, the dog got spotted, got chased and left. Then it ended up getting tackled by some Good Samaritan who it bit, sent to the ER, this little 7 pounder. He's like, those things are alligator snappers, man. They now have it in a yard, but don't know what to do with it. I had one of my volunteers go over because we were actually trapping working on 2 dogs at the same time in the area. They got it secure. I take it into the shelter for its stray hold, put a hold on it so we can get it exited. Turns out that this dog had started at the shelter. I'm assuming maybe dumped or left there, assuming it would go up to somebody. I mean, there's no question this dog at some point had human interaction, because despite being a feisty, ferocious guy with a chip on his shoulder, once everything was made better, there's a completely different dog underneath of that. Everybody's like, "Oh my God, Babs, you caught that dog." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" The dog had started at the shelter. Apparently it traveled several miles, came back to the shelter. Nobody could catch it. Even the animal control agency had tried. Well, it turns out the guy had massive infections in his ears from foxtails, burrs in his fur and in his eyeballs. I immediately vetted him, got him shaved down to the skin, everything treated. And literally by the next day, that dog he's 9 months old. 9 months old. And that dog spent 2 weeks out there fending for himself, running in traffic and amongst the coyotes. And I have countless stories like that. The founders of my 501c3. I'm a busy person and I don't have a lot of time for anything that's not fur related. And that means logistics and admin. And their dog Penny is a Zwitzla who had gone missing from a pet sitter, a boarding facility, actually, who they'd used for a long time. And they didn't make a mistake. They had a mechanical failure on their gate. Dog got loose in a very rural part of San Diego County. Happened to also be incorporated into reservation property, which can bring a whole new element to navigating the variables. 30 days, not a single sighting on that dog. Wow. We got a sighting. We started, and Penny's parents are both first responders. One is high up in the fire department and the other is an ICU nurse. Sit still, do nothing, and let me control things is not something that's
in their nature,
their vocabulary.
Right.
But they did. And because they did, we were able to get that dog on camera and successfully captured and back home. What? And, that's just one of so many.
Well, how did you, so walk us, okay, so that's a great story. I love it. It's a great story, but I don't imagine there are pet detectives or specialists in tracking and recovery all over the country. So when you're like, because I'm the same as them. It's not in my nature to sit on the sidelines and let things happen naturally. I've got to be out there shaking things up and that's just
shaking things up. You just said the word.
Yeah, and I know it causes. But I totally understand that. See, in that respect, it's not a mistake. I'm wrong, right? Because I keep doing the same thing over, and I know it's not. I know by shaking things up, you do more damage sometimes than not. But which is okay with humans, because sometimes humans need to be damaged a little and shaken a little bit.
You said that, not me.
I did, and I'll stand by it. But with Fuzzybutts, not so much. So, what walk us through if you have your little fuzzy bud and for whatever reason it gets out, it gets loose, and there's no one in the entire area pet tracking and recovery. Walk us through what you would tell that pet owner. What is the right thing? Not do your instincts. What are the right steps? The initial couple of steps that they have to take right when that happens.
Sure. And I just want to clarify, I am not an anomaly. There are a lot of people that do what I do throughout not just the States, but the world. One of the differences is that I would much rather not be out as much in the public eye, to be frank, but I am because education is key and availability of resources is a must. You know, if you don't have somebody who can guide you through those things, you're left to your own devices having to make mistakes. And the more mistakes you make up front, the more damage you may or may not have done that you may or may not be able to recover from. I always tell people, stop and make a phone call. And that's no joke. I mean, I would love to say do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and if it doesn't work out, call me. The reality is every situation is different. When did it happen? Where did it happen? How long had the dog been there? Who was involved? What scared the dog? So on and so forth. You know, but as far as the basics go, it's stop, become passive. It's not about raising the call, getting chaos, getting commotion. It's about backing off and creating an environment that is both comfortable, safe, and approachable for the dog, even if it's scared. Have a new Akita, just newly adopted, took off from the owner, got him to withdraw, stop chasing, stop trying to catch, do these things. The dog came back. Now we're still working to get the dog safe. But at the end of the day, the dog has continued to come back because we haven't given it a reason not to. So it's all about staying put. No matter where that dog went missing from, you take a pause. You don't call out, you don't chase, you don't follow, you don't scream. Because now you've given that dog every reason not to return or to caution if it will do so. So it's all about stopping. Then it's about utilizing how a dog thinks and its environment in ways that set the dog up for success with minimal risk. You know, the reality is it's not dirty laundry. It's not dirty sheets. It's not the dog bed. You know, I tell people take a dirty, well, if you're in Texas, underwear works great because you don't have any neighbors close by. You know, if you're close to others, socks, you know, but friendly dogs. What is the very first thing they do? First thing they do is run up and make everybody uncomfortable because they stick their nose where it doesn't belong and sniff their feet. They don't know it's awkward to us. That is where we put off our hormones, our strongest smells. That's why you hear people talk about their dogs getting in their underwear. You know, it's about getting it up in the air, creating an isolated GPS marker. The other reason that I make myself available by phone, so a lot of people out there in a lot of different methodologies, but sometimes people are kind of textbook without really understanding the dog behavior piece. You know, and the fact is if you don't understand how dogs operate on raw instinct on their own in the field, you can't understand how to fine tune things. You know, you get a lot of people that do trails. If you do a trail and your dog intersects it midway and goes left and you're right, you just missed an opportunity.
Right.
You know, if you've ever watched a dog work its nose, right? It's up in the air, hits the ground, and goes to the point of origin. Same concept. You're creating a point of origin for that dog to find you or whatever on some level is valuable to it. That dog I lost, that buddy dog never left my property. You know, you don't go looking for your dog. Your dog is going everywhere you go. You don't take your other dog out looking for your dog to draw it out. Your lost dog is not going to come out and see if that's George versus a coyote. But once George is gone, your lost dog's going to be looking for George. And George is not a trained scent hound, and he just thinks he's getting some one-on-one time. You know, they won't starve, but they get hungry. You don't put food out. Let me clarify. There are changes. There are changes. That Akita, for example, we did utilize food, and I'll tell you why. That dog had no incentive to commit to coming inside, going in a yard, or doing anything else. We needed to make sure that it found a food source that it would continue to return back to so we could get it safe. In the case of a dog with a relationship, you do not need your dog grazing in the front yard so Susie Q can go, oh my God, there's George. Oh, yep, there's George. Bye-bye. Right? You can feed the dog when it gets there. Kibble, food, it has no smell. You don't need to set your dog up as bait in the front yard. But what you can do is use strong smells of food elevated in the air to draw your dog back. I said the dog won't starve. That doesn't mean it won't get hungry. You get chicken broth soaked into the bark of a tree and sitting in the leaves.
Chicken broth soaked into the bark.
How do you think we get them to a trap?
That is fascinating. I was gonna, before you said that, which is a great idea, but I was gonna make a joke about how, so if you're driving down in your neighborhood and you see a neighbor that has their knickers hanging on the fence and like a steak and a fan behind it wafting the steak, well, they lost their dog.
Well, but that's a very good point, Luke, and I'll tell you why. That's why people need to talk to myself or others with solid experience.
Right.
You have to remember this is a concept that talks to how dogs think. People have a tendency to think, take a good idea and make it better. In human world, more is always better. Nothing can hurt, and that couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to dog behavior. The wind is more than adequate, but you get a big power fan out there, your dog comes running around the corner, it's not smelling steak, it hears a fan and goes, oh, shoot, and off it goes, right?
Wow. Yeah.
You don't do those things. You'll see people make recommendations, go barbecue.
Right.
Why would you go barbecue? That involves people, chaos, noise, and commotion.
Yeah.
That your dog has to figure out whether or not it should approach. You get chicken broth all up in the bark of a tree and sitting in the leaves, and you just sit there. You got none of that, but the same concept, right? Strong smell, moving in the wind. In some parts of the country, I will suggest liquid smoke just because it has a little bit more oil content to it. So where there's a lot of moisture involved, it doesn't quite freeze as quickly as chicken broth, and it won't wash off as easily. But again, you have to be careful. It simulates the smell of barbecue, but it's also, well, you're from Texas, so I think you probably know what liquid smoke is. Some people don't. I'm from the South. The reality is, too much is way too much, and you're going nowhere near it. I mean, oh my God, when I've had to use liquid smoke, I'm like, oh, I just want to throw up. But it's about understanding communication with the dog without the human pieces that make it ineffective or counterproductive.
Why wouldn't you use bacon in lieu of liquid smoke? Because for me, I know my kids, bacon is a very familiar aroma in my house, and that has that can broadcast a pretty strong scent, and it has some of that smokiness in there, I think.
I do.
Yeah.
I do sometimes tell people to open their windows and start cooking bacon.
Yeah.
The reality is when you're within the walls of a house,
right,
your flow is somewhat limited. So I will supplement that with that chicken broth on the outside. But yeah, I mean, if people don't have liquid smoke, I'm like, cook up some bacon, get that grease in a tree. Again, you have to remember that's going to congeal, and you don't want your dog lingering in the front yard, because right, wrong, or indifferent, one of the things you have to be mindful of is other things. I get a lot of people, oh my God, why don't I leave my doors open? Or, oh my God, the coyotes and the bears. The reality is those things are already there. We're not drawing the attention really of anything that's not already present, but we are giving them a center of focus. So you have to moderate that with proper application that's why you don't put food out. You don't need your dog out there grazing to get pounced on by a coyote. Right. The other piece of that is sometimes when it's bear country and season. I've got somebody with a dog missing right now in an RV park up in Big Bear. Big Bear. Hi. There's
my Great Pyrenees number, my Fuzzybutt 4, Indiana Jones, right there. And he has a harness. He has a harness on, which doesn't fit him well, but he has serious hind mobility issues, and we think it's neuropathy. So we have to use it to get him up and get him moving. But there's something funny. We were talking about Pyrenees. I thank God I learned this I learned this when I had Malcolm, but it's been reinforced all throughout my travels. Is, what do you call a Pyrenees off leash? Gone.
I call them disappeared.
I like that. But we like to keep things around an hour, and so we're kind of want to start winding things down. There's a lot of wonderful information there, but I wanted to talk about your actual nonprofit, Away Home for Dogs. Tell us about that. Give us the website and how people can help you out with that.
Well, Away Home for Dogs is exactly that. The premise of the nonprofit is helping owners with missing pets. I do that for free. I never want somebody to go to bed at night wondering if money would have gotten in the way of their pet being home. The reality is I could charge a lot of money for what I do, and there are people that pay a lot of money to others. The fact is this is not about finances. This is about the dog, and I do all of that for free and out of my own pocket. It involves equipment, gas, time, volunteers and other things. But the byproduct of that and the bigger piece of our 501c3 is that sadly, every dog we go out to trap does not have an owner behind them, or an owner that bothers to come claim them, or a new adopter that's committed to giving them the future they started with. Yep.
So Way Home, just to clarify, I guess I got that confused. A Way Home for dogs then is not a separate shelter and rescue that you have. That's actually your pet tracking business, or do you
It's
have
both. It's both.
Okay.
It's actually both. You know, A Way Home for Dogs is helping owners get their pets home and helping these dogs that don't have individuals or individuals that don't claim them into their new homes.
So helping dogs find, if they don't have a home, giving them a new home to begin.
Correct.
That's so go ahead, please.
Those can be captured. You know, we are not a relinquishment or a rehoming. We don't do shelter pulls. You know, I'm commonly asked, because my specialty is the feral, under socialized. What people don't realize is that the larger majority of dogs that we secure and subsequently bring into our rescue needed an exit because they were going to be euthanized and take 6 months to a year for rehab. You know, it's not a turn and burn. They have to learn trust, relationship, life skills. We do pack walks, we do adoption events, not just for promotion of these dogs, but so they can learn that life in the scary world, contained on the end of a leash, attached to a strange person, is not a death sentence. And, you know, times are rough. You know, right now we've got 70+ dogs in our care. You know, we've got a dog right now that's going to require a feeding tube. You know, we spend probably $10,000 a month on feed, medical. We don't have a designated training budget and do our best to ask when we need it. The reality is we have a lot of dogs that rely on us as their safety net to be able to have a future. We also have a sanctuary that we've established in Texas, which we are in the process of building and will be promoting and looking for support to do, because all of these dogs do not have futures in the care of a home. And so we're going to have a large facility that has large yards, in and outs, things along that nature, so that they can have a more natural environment versus a kennel life for their duration.
Times are indeed tough, and it's so important for what you're doing. That's so critical in society. But I have a question. So you don't charge for your tracking and recovery services at all, is that accurate?
Correct.
Well, I was curious. There are obviously a lot of, I walked the entire length of Southern California, and I assure you there's a ton of wealth and a ton of wealthy people down there, none of which stopped to say hello to me in Indiana or ask about what we were doing and stuff. So I'm a little bit jaded about Southern California. They talk about being animal lovers, but when you put them to work, they don't do it and stuff. So, but there's a lot of money. So why don't you here's a business idea for you, do pet tracking and recovery for all the wealthy celebrities that can pay you and a ton of money, and use that to subsidize your efforts, because I think it's wonderful what you're doing. But I know there have been many times Ginger has not taken a salary for her work in the nonprofit world, and we do that because and I don't think I've made any money at all. I think all I've done, I don't think I'll ever make money off of what I do for dogs with cancer. But that was never the intention. It was never about that. Like, that's true with Ginger. That's also true with you. But that only lasts so long. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our own lives and stuff, and so that it is important. So have you thought about that business model, is finding all the people with the money and using them to subsidize your services? Because you got to take care of yourself.
Well, here is, I guess, the probably not well-liked answer to that. First of all, part of the reason I don't get the financial support that I need is because I've never been good about asking. I know it's a poor business model, but at the end of the day, I'm not in it for money or anything other than the animals. What I'll also tell you is that I have had the pleasure and displeasure, depending on the situation, of working with many celebrities and or people affiliated with many celebrities. And I always tried, the larger majority of them have been amazing, and I've been very respectful of their anonymity and otherwise. But I will also tell you, I don't think a single one of them has ever donated as a result of my support to them.
Wow, I'm not surprised. You know, that's the big scandal with celebrities. They talk about their work with charity, but they never put up any of their money. And the reality is, in our world, we don't do celebrity fundraising events, because the truth is, whenever you do celebrity fundraising events, the cost to have the celebrity and host the celebrity and appeal to their rider list. They come with a rider list of all the things that they want. You have to provide them with like champagne and truffles and whatnot. It ends up being a lot more expensive, and you end up losing more money than the fundraiser raises. And it's just like, my God, that's ridiculous. So I'm not dissing on celebrities. They serve a function in society, but to think that celebrities are active in charities is just a misunderstanding. They don't. The most majority I've seen, there are some that are truly dog lovers and they're truly walk the walk and talk the talk, and that's great, but they're not. They're an exception rather than the rule. So I get that. And I also
one thing I do want to say though is, in my interactions with celebrities and or people affiliated with celebrities, what I will say is that they're as human and real and just like every other owner, as any other owner I talk to, just as sometimes hard to manage emotionally,
right.
And in other cases, just as committed and dedicated, sometimes to a fault or to an advantage, depending on how willing they are to be guided,
right.
And I think that's, I don't, right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't treat them any differently. The reality is they're a human, they're missing a family member, and
right.
this is
absolutely.
Like.
Absolutely.
It's that way too. I haven't seen a lot of support financially through that, or offers of support, I guess.
Right. And that's important. They're human beings. They've lost their kid. And I'm speaking more to the cult of celebrity and the industry of the institution of celebrity, the institutionalization of it, because it is an institution. It is a big business. And what I've seen is that it's a tough business, and so some of them behave that way because they have to protect them. It's a very brutal business, and it's not easy. But at the end of the day, they're humans, and we're all humans, and it's all about us. When we lose our loved ones, we need help to find them. And so let's go ahead and wrap things up. And we're gonna lose whatever celebrities in our audience that we have. I love you guys. I was talking about the culture celebrities. We love you because I actually have met some, and they've been wonderful. But the ones I've met were always a part of an animal rescue or a shelter that was theirs, and so they walk the walk and talk the talk. So, Babs, is there anything else that you would like to talk to our audience about? Any more life lessons or tracking lessons, or anything else you'd like us to leave with?
Well, I guess the two things that I would say is, my number is 619-249-2221. If you need help, please call me. I really do answer my phone 24/7 and make myself readily available to consult worldwide. And I also am not the only one, and I'm very happy to not have to be the person to catch your dog. But what I can do is help you understand the guidance that you're getting, if it's solid, keep you on track, or connect you with resources that are solid versus compromising. And we do need support financially. We have a lot of things in the works. We are growing, and we're just trying to do bigger, better. And that can be done through our website at awayhomefordogs.com. Our Facebook profile frequently has fundraisers or Venmo and other things, but I guess what I would tell you more than anything is, don't give up and trust the process. That is kind of our motto. The reality is there is a lot to be hopeful for out there. And I'm here to empower you to make steps in the right direction rather than get caught up in the despair of hopelessness, because if you do, your dog might still be out there and you might be missing opportunities.
Absolutely. That's very important. Give that website again one more time.
awayhomefordogs.com.
Yeah, please go out there and to our audience, please go out there and support the best you can, because it is a tough thing that we do, but we do it for the Fuzzybutts, and that's why we're here, including this podcast as well, because this podcast is not financially supported. I've been paying for it. I pay for pretty much everything that I do, and I don't ever expect to be reimbursed. I don't ask for money. I'm like you. It's not my nature. I make art now, and I'm a horrible artist because I don't go out and I don't sell it and I don't promote it and I don't go put it up, mint it out for sell like the ones that are successful do. Because to me, it's about what we do, what we love, and that's the case here. Well, Babs, you're a wonderful human being. Thank you for everything that you do, and I love that you gave your phone number, because there's a little known secret about me. My phone number, my personal cell number, is up on Facebook for this very same reason, is that if you have a dog with cancer and you need to talk to somebody who's been there, been through it, and that will give you their just be truthful and honest and be there for you for whatever reason. I'm there. That's what I do. Not a lot of people do it because I don't think that people call people on out of the blue on Facebook. But I
Call me.
I make myself right now. My cell is 901-674-9621. I'll put mine out there right now on this podcast. You have a dog that has cancer or has been diagnosed with cancer. If you have any question, my cell number is, I am always available. And I don't think people will I don't think people will abuse it. They haven't in the past, and I don't think they will. So I put it out there. I'm always available. That's what I'm about. And I love that you are too. You're genuine. You're a true hero. You're a true hero to our Fuzzybutts. So you're welcome back on our show anytime you want to tell us about a story, a funny story, share with us a new initiative. If you need to fundraise, raise some money, we'll help you out with that. Anything to do to help you out. But I love that. So guys, audience, if you lost your dog, you've got Bab's number. So you've got a clear pathway to help. So there's no reason for you not to reach out and get help. All right, Ginger, we've reached that time of the program where I ask you, what the hell did I screw up? What did I miss? What did I leave out? What did I screw up this time?
Well, I don't know that you screwed up anything. But I wasn't listening to you. I was listening to Babs. So
there it is. That's it. You are. I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that I do want to say is what Babs said, is not to give up hope on finding your dog. I think, we had talked about me. I found my dog Faye after almost 2 weeks. I found her at the animal shelter because I was going there every day. But I also have two friends who their dogs, one friend, I think her dog was gone for a month. It was a German Shepherd, and she opened her back door or her front door one day, and there it was. It had worn its pads down. She said it looked like it had dug its way out of something or walked a long way to get home. And then the other friend, she and her family, again, it was like a month, almost a month to the day. And they were eating outside at a restaurant, maybe close to their home, and their dog walked up to them. They didn't recognize her because she wasn't groomed and she was dirty and she had lost some weight. But their dog walked up to them at that restaurant. So don't give up hope.
And I don't want my phone to blow up with people whose dogs have been missing for years, but I do want to share quickly that I had an owner whose dog went missing, no sightings after the initial one, and 3.5 years later, I got a call from a ranger about a dog that had been seen in the riverbed raiding the homeless camps looking for food, and it was that person's dog.
Oh, wow.
3.5 years later, we were able to secure it and get it back to its person. It's amazing what they're capable of. Trust your dog.
That's a great way to leave this. And I also like what you said, is that you open your door to your home and your dog has found its way home. And now, you truly appreciate the importance of the name of your foundation, A Way Home for Dogs. They're just looking for a way home. And you as a pet parent got to get out of that way. Just get out of their way. Just make sure they have that pathway to home. So that's very important. All right. We usually talk about a cancer tip of the week. We've gone a little long. Ginger, I think we wanted to talk about Indiana. I think this time, because it's very real and near and dear to me right now. My Indiana Jones, we don't know if he has cancer yet. He was getting an MRI for his mobility issues in his back, and while they were intubating him at Mississippi State, they found a mass. It appears to be on his vocal cords. So we're going through that right now. We should have, I think next week we have an appointment next week to talk about either biopsying it or removing it and having that biopsy. We're not sure how we're going to go with it, but it's one of the lessons I think that we wanted to share with our audience, Ginger, about it's just an unusual, strange way to get an early diagnosis or cancer, because the mass, if it is cancer, it appears to be very small, and he was completely symptomatic or asymptomatic, completely symptom-free with it. So that right there, I feel like, is always a reason to take your Fuzzybutts to the vet, the veterinarian, and have them looked at by vets as often as you can. because having that extra set of eyes, whether it's a professional or it's a groomer or it's a dog walker, anybody that you can have interact with your companions, is a perfect way to socialize them. But always have second or third set of eyes on your fuzzy butts, because it's hard to detect. So we'll let our audience know what the biopsy results are. It's one of the reasons why our podcasts have been, our podcasts have been a little bit, I've had to cancel a bunch of interviews. So over the last couple of weeks, because we've been going from appointment to appointment, trying to figure out what's been going on within Indiana. So I appreciate your patience with everything. We'll let you know the results of the biopsy as soon as we got them. So, all right, Ginger, I think Babs, one more time, give us your website, your social media.
awayhomefordogs.com, and Facebook is Away Home for Dogs.
Well, thank you.
And your phone number.
Yeah.
619-249-2221.
Do you mind if we put that number in the show notes?
Absolutely, not a problem.
Okay, great. We'll do that. And I don't suspect, I found that, fuzzy butt parents, they don't abuse situations like that. So you should be okay. But thank you for helping people's fuzzy butts find their way home to their pet parents. Thank you for everything that you do. Babs Fry, she's with Away Home for Dogs. Please go help her, support her in her mission, because she's the real deal. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in this week. Fuzzy Butts and Friends. We'll see you next Tuesday. We drop, typically we drop at midnight on Tuesdays. You can find our podcast on the platforms such as iHeartRadio or Spotify, or you can watch this and see what we look like. And then we're people too, and we have a lot of fun. And you can find our YouTube channel at fuzzybutstudios.com. Until next week, puppy up. Talk soon.